Been a little bit of a harrowing few days here on the Vespers home front. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball. There was the plan to have no show on Friday, so that all went according to plan as I went out of town. By the way, not that you guys care, but it's the off season, so I feel like I can digress slightly. That's the first time on Friday, or on Thursday, actually, in the afternoon, that I've gone out of town without my family for more than one overnight since my older son was born. So that's 8.5 years. I never leave this place. I'm reminded of the line from Beer Fest, but it's me about my house. You go, I'm never leaving this place. But I did. Yesterday, the lack of show was not by design. That's the call, man. You always get that it's the one you fear. The call at 8:45 from the younger kids' preschool. Dan, your kid threw up. You got to pick him up. Well, therefore went to the day. Anyway, that's why there was no show yesterday. Kid is doing much better today. Thank you for asking. But he is home because, you can't send him back that fast or you're going to get everybody else ill. And we don't want to be, if we already weren't, patient zero. Also, I was supposed to record with Alex Rickleen yesterday. I had to cancel. We're going to reschedule. And it means that my whole plan is just turded. And plus, now the rest of us are going to catch it probably tomorrow. So get ready for this maybe being the only show you get all week. So anyway, all that into the hopper. I've lost any of you that were new. Luckily, the rest of you guys are probably the 99.9% of you are just longtime listeners who are bored in the off season. Now you got fantasy basketball. The plan was to talk with Alex about how the top of the board has been shifting. But instead, we're going to jump over that one and get back into the how did the pre-ranks do discussion that we started in the middle of last week. We got into a little bit of it on Thursday, and now we're going to pick up where we left off from that show today. We got through the first 70 names. Basically, we were just going through to recap here very quickly how every player did inside the top 100. Where did they start? Where did they finish? Why? And is there anything we can learn from it? So we're going to pick up at number 71 today. That's Josh Giddey, who had a pre-rank of 71. He was well worse than that for most of the season, but the last 2 months, he was basically a second rounder, and he finished at number 64. Was there a way to see an intense finish coming? There was always the hope with Josh was that as the season went on, the Bulls might clear the deck for him a little bit, and they did. But for years, we've thought the Bulls were going to clear the deck, and they didn't do it. Finally, this time around, they did trade Zach LaVine, so it was like a partial deck clearing, and Giddey's usage went through the roof when he was healthy after the All-Star break. He was fantastic. He was actually a first rounder over the last 15 games on 21, 10.5, 9. I mean, he was up there. These are like Jokic numbers, minus 9 points in scoring. 2 3-pointers a game, 1.5 steals, 0.8 blocks, 49.5% from the field, 79 at the free throw line. Yeah, that's, not an area of massive expertise for him. But these are first round numbers. Do I think that's what he'll do over an entire season? Probably not. Nothing in the profile suggests that he's going to average a full-on triple-double, but he was good. And going into next year, he's probably going to be drafted higher than where he was this season. It's going to come down to what we think we're going to get out of him going into next year. Because right now, he and Kobe White are the usage guys on that team. Vooch is on an expiring deal this coming season, so that usage might even get out of the way at some point. So I think you can be pretty bullish on Giddey for next year. Anthony Simons opened at 72. He finished at 101. Awful start to the year. He was better as the year went on, and then he faded at the very end when Portland started kind of semi-pulling the plug on things. Middle of the season was kind of the good part for Simons, but the problem with Anthony Simons is that we know his fantasy game, and it just doesn't translate all that great. He's a punt field goal guy, good free throws, good threes, good scoring. The assists were up at 4.8, which I guess we'll kind of take. But overall, it's like the shooting guard's stat profile, which is, in my estimation, the hardest fantasy profile to turn into 9-cap productivity. because they're typically not good at rebounding, typically not that great at both defensive stats, not that great at field goal percent, meaning you have to be hyper elite in something that I didn't just say if you want to be a useful fantasy asset. And for Simons, he was pretty damn good in free throws at 90%. That's solid. 3 threes a game is solid. 19 points is decent. 5 assists is decent. But nothing about his numbers was like, wowie! And I don't know that it's going to get any better season over season. And he was a guy that was just overdrafted. Walker Kessler. Remember, we're looking at per game ranks right now. Walker Kessler opened at 73. He finished at 50. Obviously, the rest days down the stretch were the annoying part of this endeavor. But he did do what we wanted him to do, which was block a ton of shots. He blocked 2.5 shots a game on 30 minutes a night, 12 rebounds, shot 66%. He was a punt free throw superstar because if you remove the 52% foul shooting from Kessler, he jumps even farther up the board. But really the issue there, like if you drafted him, you knew the free throws were going to suck. You were just hoping he played in some games down the stretch, and he didn't. So to that end, it was a disappointment. I will tell you, though, when we get into the totals ranks in a few shows from now, Kessler, because he beat his per game mark, yes, he missed a lot of games. He actually didn't hurt you as much as it seems like he might have. Guys, BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for all sports betting action. Did you miss the Kentucky Derby? I'm sorry. I should have told you about it, but I was out of town. Baseball season's in full swing. We're into the NBA and NHL playoffs, second round on that NBA side. And BetOnline has more ways to stay in on the action with the latest odds, news, and scores. Even live in-game betting while, I don't know if you guys are getting this, while the games are going on. Tonight, Indy is at Cleveland trying to go up 2-0 over the injured suddenly Cavaliers. 8-point favorites the Cavs are at home, total of 229.5. Warriors in Minnesota, they open up their series in Minnesota. Wolves are a 6.5-point favorite with a total of 210.5. Warriors played a 7-game series. Their rest is not going to be fantastic for this one. Minnesota, pretty damn well rested, but they did have to wait a long time to figure out who the hell was going to come out of that Warriors-Rockets series. What do we think is going to happen? Do we think Cleveland can hunker down? Well, we don't know who's going to play for them yet. Do we think Minnesota can clamp the Warriors the way they did the Lakers? They're going to be good defensively. Will they score enough against the Warriors? How are they going to attack them? Game ones are all about teams just sort of throwing their fastball and seeing what happens. That's what's at that second game. But the Warriors are going to be tired. Tired usually lends to not great defense. Where do you think that's going to go? Head to BetOnline today and get down on the action. They've got the largest selection of odds on everything from baseball, basketball, NHL, UFC. Football will be coming around not too long. BetOnline, the ultimate source for all sports wagering info. And by the way, if you don't want to wait for games to start, you can go to the casino. Oh, they've got all the top Vegas style games. Poker, live casino, live slots, blackjack, tons of different types of blackjack. They got it all. BetOnline. The game starts here. That was a longer read than usual, but you know what? I haven't done a show in a few days, so we got to get back in on it. Devin Vassell opened at 74, finished at 78. That's remarkably consistent numbers there, but he did open the season hurt, finished at 64 games played. We would have liked a little bit more, but you kind of knew what you were going to getting there. And also, I do think there's a chance he could be better as his career continues to develop a little bit. But this is a pretty reasonable spot for him to go next year. Ivica Zubac's one of the biggest wins in all of fantasy basketball. Pre-rank of 75, which was, by the way, that's as early as he went. Because he opened, remember, near the edge of the top 100. And this is like, we got to get down on this dude. When he got up to near 75, I started to get a little bit worried. We might start to price him out. But he was even better than that. I am very excited. He's going to go super early next year. And he probably should. But there's not a whole lot to take away. That was one we knew was going to be better because he was running all pick and rolls with Harden for most of the year, and he was just really good all season. Jordan Poole opened at 76. He finished at 60, which is fine. That turned out to be a pretty decent season for Jordan. Wait, that's not right. 69? What happened here? Oh, things are fluctuating because playoff numbers are impacting it. It's on Yahoo. He was 60. Sorry, I was looking at Basketball Monster and some Yahoo on others. They're close, but they're not the same. If you were punting the things you knew he was going to be bad at, then that became an even easier win on Jordan Poole. But again, shut down for the last 3 weeks, basically. He was Anthony Simons with more steals. That was what Jordan Poole was this year. Why take Anthony Simons when you could take Jordan Poole? This is roughly where he belongs. It's fine. We kind of knew. And he was also a little bit of a post-type guy because he got way overdrafted last season. So this time, falling into the 70s, 80s, great. You knew it was going to be a little bit better. Drew Holiday was a disappointment. He had a shoulder thing going pretty much the entire year. There were stretches in there where he looked pretty decent, but he generally sat around the edge of the top 100. If he had been more himself, he shot 44.5% from the field instead of, we were thinking 47, 48, he would have been right where we expected him to be. But he didn't, so he wasn't. And if you can get him around 100 next year, I think it's probably worth a stab. Just understanding, again, the Celtics are not going to play their guys more than about 65 to 68 games if they're not fully, unadulteratedly healthy. Yusuf Nurkic opened at 78, finished at 233. He was an easy avoid for me on this show because last year was as good as it was going to get for him. Phoenix brought in depth, and you remember we talked about this during the preseason. They were just like Mason Plumlee. I was like, look, Mason Plumlee at some point is going to just take minutes from Nurk. Whether it's going to be every night, some nights, I don't know. But there was only an arrow pointed down for him. And the question was how far down. This was farther than I ever expected, but he was an avoid guy, so it sort of like didn't matter. I had him no place. I wanted him no place. Then Phoenix turned on him. Teammates didn't like him, shipped him out, basically did nothing the rest of the way. Onward we go. OG Anunoby. Kudos, by the way, to OG, because I dodged him, not because I thought he wasn't going to have a good year, but because he just had never really been healthy, and he was this year. He ended up having a great season. He only missed a handful of games all year long, finished at number 36 per game. But again, the health, we knew he was going to beat his per game mark. I had no idea he was going to beat his health mark. That was the really exciting part. Michael Porter Jr. started at 80, finished at 75. He was always a very safe play there, and that's fine. Colin Sexton started at 81, finished at 166 for the tanking Jazz. Just a team that I want nothing to do with going forward. Pissed me off. I did have him in one spot. I didn't want him at 81, but I ended up with him when he fell to like 95. I thought, all right, like he'll probably beat this by a round. Nope. He was a guy that I didn't, and it's one of those things again where it was like, oh, this is a guy I didn't really want, but here he is a round and a half later than I thought I was going to be able to take him. Oops. Well, I don't really regret it all that much because like around 100, it seemed like he probably would have been an okay value, and he was worse than that. If you were in a league where he got taken at 81 and that saved us the indignity of ending up with him, that's great. Trey Murphy, pre-rank of 82, final per-game rank of 23. He had a chance to be one of the biggest winners of this entire season. Remember, he started the year hurt, came back to a Pelicans team that was missing a couple of guys, was incredible, and then himself got hurt, tore his labrum. Hopefully, he'll be okay by the start of this next season. And if he is, I really have no idea where he's going to get drafted. He's probably going to be a top 50 guy this coming year, but I don't know where he's going to go. Bogdan Bogdanovic, he really just didn't look right most of this year. Didn't look healthy with Atlanta. Clippers had too many weapons, and that one just fell apart because he just wasn't right. I mean, remember he took time off with like a hamstring tendinopathy at the start of the year? Oops. I didn't know he had a hamstring tendinopathy. The hell was I supposed to know that? Got him in the 90s. Miss. Keegan Murray started at 84, finished at 86. He was fine. I didn't want him anywhere because I didn't think there was any upside there with DeMar DeRozan coming to town. And then they added Zach LaVine as well. And Keegan was fine. He was boring. 12.5 points, 6.5 rebounds. I mean, like he was the definition of fine. You want to take him at 90 next year and just get a fine player there? I'm fine with it. Everything about it, you guessed it, it's fine. It's totally fine. But it's sort of like a big who cares. Super low turnovers. He's got that going for him. Oh, you didn't get Michael Porter Jr.? We'll get Keegan Murray, who's like Michael Porter Jr. minus 4 points, but slightly better defensive stats. Okay, whatever. Let's keep going. Kobe White started at 85, finished at 72. Much like Josh Giddey, things really kicked into high gear for Kobe when the Bulls shipped out Zach LaVine. Not that it's any kind of real surprise. He was great. He was number 40 the second half of the season after being around the edge of the top 100 the first half. So again, like, is this the Bulls we're going to get next year minus Zach LaVine? Obviously, he's gone. But, like, is it going to be the Giddey and Kobe White show all season? It could be. I think I'd be pretty comfortable taking Kobe White, like, around 60 next year. We'll see where he goes, though. Mark Williams started at 86, finished at 44. The 86 rank was because he was going to start the year hurt. So rightfully got pushed down the board quite a lot because he only played in 44 games. But if he does actually start this next year healthy, he should probably be in the Jared Allen corridor. You know, all the centers that go between 40 and 70. There's a bunch of them with not a ton of upside beyond where you take them, but also pretty high floor. Again, you know, the issue for the Hornets is going to be, do you trust any of these guys to play down the stretch or be healthy all year? And the answer I have right now is, I don't know. At some point, that team's going to have to try to win, or no one's ever going to want to play there. You can only tank for a decade, I think is probably the rule. CJ McCollum opened at 87, finished at 115. He was actually better than that for a while. And like many Pels, just kind of farted it out down the stretch. Percentages completely fell apart. Second half of the year, he's number 135. First half of the year, he was like number 75, number 80. I don't know what CJ is going to be next year, but the Pels are going to be competitive. So I would think around 100 is a pretty reasonable spot for him. Jonathan Kuminga does not have fantasy game. We try to tell you that repeatedly on this show, and hopefully you listen, because he did not belong on rosters. Jabari Smith Jr., he was likely to get played out of the way, and he did. So another pretty easy one that we didn't want anything to do with, and nothing about these guys screams it's about to get better. Jakob Poeltl started at 90, finished at 42. The Raptors were badly injured all season long, and that helped him mostly with like just getting more stuff going on offense. He also, the problem, of course, with the Raptors was that, and Poeltl was a part of this, came out before the season was like, hey, we're not going to try to win every game this year. Like, whoop, Jakob, easy. But they probably should going into next year. They traded for Brandon Ingram. So, like, they've assembled a team of solid players. They got basically a starting five that should be a playoff team. I don't think they're going to tank a second time. But we'll know if anybody gets moved. In any event, a healthy Poeltl should probably be drafted in that Jared Allen corridor as well on a non-tanking situation. Alex Caruso started at 91, finished at 111, but he was just on and off of the injured list all season long. We never got to see Caruso truly get going this year. Every time it seemed like he might have a chance to sort of pop through, it just didn't happen. He played like 19 minutes a game. That was the big issue. They were trying to keep him healthy. He wasn't really. And therein lies the rub. If he had played 25 minutes like we thought he was going to play, he'd have been an easy win at this spot. Instead, he was a small loss. And then with the injury, he was a bigger loss. So of all the handicaps, truly, this is the one I feel like I got the most wrong. Because, like, Freddie VanVleet shot 4% worse than I thought he was going to shoot. I didn't know that was going to happen. He'd have been a top 35, top 40 guy easily if he shot where we expected. Yeah, some of the stuff was down, but he still would have been around where you drafted him. Bradley Beal, if he had mostly stayed healthy, he wouldn't have been that far off where he was. Caruso, and I know he didn't miss the mark by that much, but, like, at 91, I thought we were getting a 2 to 3 round steal, not a 2-round loss. And his role and everything about what he did in OKC, I got wrong. These other guys, there was some like anomalous, there's some fluctuations, things of that nature. Like, yeah, I didn't predict those things, but those things are very hard to predict. Wild swings in percentages. With Caruso, just totally whiffed on his role. Oops. Tyler Hero had the shooting season of his life this year. And then, of course, Jimmy Butler's gone now. So it's just going to keep being that. I don't know if he's going to shoot 47%. Remember, he was up around 50 for a while. He was like a top 25 guy. He started to tail off towards the end of the year, which we kind of assumed he would. and he was more like a top 50, top 60 type dude when the percentages were lower. But he's going to be a guy that gets drafted around 40 next year, and that's probably a relatively safe spot for him, if also pricing out a bit some of the upside. Jonas Valanciunas never really came around. The nice thing about Valanciunas is he went up so much in his pre-draft ranking to 93. He was back in the like 120s. I was like, yeah, hell yeah, we'll take a shot on that. We'll get him in the Wizards until he gets traded. He'll probably put up decent numbers. And then this is way too early. You can't be spending an 8th round pick on someone you think is going to be gone from your team at the halfway point of the season. That's just the rule. And then he was bad anyway. So that saved us from ourselves. Thank goodness he went too early. Draymond Green at 94. He was bad for half a season. He was very good for the second half when he started to feel like his team had a shot to be something. He played much harder. And I think that might be the way it goes for him every year. Terrific punt points play. That's going to kind of be the only way you should be drafting Draymond, because 9 points a game is god-awful, especially with the high turnovers and bad percentages. But 6 boards, 6 assists, 2.6 defensive stats, that's the stuff where you're just mushing it all together and you know he'll make some kind of purpose for your team. Jalen Suggs at 95. He finished at 82. He was on his way to a really good season, and then he just fell apart. He tried to come back from injury. It wasn't there. His percentages fell off because of it. If you trust him to stay healthy, which I don't really, he's the kind of guy who plays so hard that he plays himself into injuries. But again, if you can get him around 100, it's an all upside play, with, of course, the chance that he falls apart. Brook Lopez, he did it again, man. The Jesse Pinkman meme. He can't keep getting away with this. We love ourselves some Brook Lopez. His pre-rank was all over the map. There was a long stretch where he was at like 116. I was like, yes, give me all the Brook Lopez in the 10th round. And then he jumped up to 70 for like a day. And then he fell back, and then he jumped up, and then he fell back again. And this was a pretty good spot for him at 96. But by the time they moved him back down to 96, everybody had already locked in their spot. And so he was generally going around 75 or 80. So I had no Brook Lopez's this year, which is weird because if Chris Paul wasn't going to be the logo of the old man squad, it was probably going to be Brook Lopez. Well, it seems like he's in the market to be, top 100-ish next year. I do think that he's fading slightly, and the Bucks might look pretty different next year too. So let's keep an eye out on that. Herb Jones, he came back from injury and was on his way to an epic run with half the Pelicans hurt, and then he got hurt again. And so he only played 20 games. I think this was going to be actually a pretty good pick at 97, but you can't budget for catastrophic injury, and so down it went. Kyle Kuzma, he's terrible. I've been trying to tell you guys this for 5 years. Chris Paul was great. You want to know how many games Chris Paul missed this year? You already know the answer. 0. He played in every damn game this season. On a per-game ranking standpoint, he wasn't that great. He finished in the mid-80s, 84 on Yahoo, 83 on Basketball Monster. 9 points, 7.5 assists, 1.3 steals, 1.6 turnovers. So you got that sweet, almost 5-to-1 assist-to-turnover ratio. He did exactly what we wanted him to do in San Antonio, which is play 28 minutes, orchestrate, be super efficient, and then unfortunately get phased out a bit as De'Aaron Fox is getting phased in. So I don't know that Chris Paul is going to be a particularly good target next year. You guys know I love to put Chris Paul on my roster whenever I can, but I don't think there's any chance he's better next year. So you're probably looking at a guy that falls towards the edge of the top 100 or worse, and he'll probably get drafted there anyway. And then Austin Reeves. This turned out to be a great one. He was also on our targets list. I didn't think it was going to be this good, though. I can't give myself that much credit. I thought Reeves was going to be more like a 60 to 85 range, and he finished at 40. And a lot of that's because they unloaded D'Lo pretty early in the season. There was like, yeah, this isn't working, Austin. You're the number 3. And then they switched who the number 2 was, but it didn't really change what Reeves was doing. He is, to Reeves' credit, by the way, tough as nails. Dude tries to play through everything. He's great percentages-wise, good at both of them. And he's still kind of learning how to exist around Luka, which is a different universe than existing around LeBron, who, as many assists as Luka racks up, I think I'd argue that LeBron is a little bit more of a willing passer. Luka was at 7.5 assists this year. LeBron was at 8. Not you can't draw anything from that. Luka's always going to pass when it's appropriate, but there's something a little bit more like beautifully chaotic in a LeBron-led offense, and a Luka offense is plodding at times. It's going to get you good shots most of the time, but it's plodding. With LeBron, you get out and run. You're going to get some easier looks. So, or at least transition looks, I should say. So, I think there's going to be a little bit of adjustment there. I don't know where Reeves is going to get drafted next season. I wouldn't take him at 40. I would happily take him in the 50s or 60s, I would think. Is it just like he's the third dude there? But seeing him as a win at 100 seemed pretty straightforward. I just thought it was going to be like a 2-round win, and it ended up at 5. It's gravy. You take the gravy where you can get it. We're around the 26-minute mark, and we're getting close to wrapping up, but I want to let you guys know what's coming up in terms of like what we're going to break down here. Let's zoom out a tad on the per game side. I haven't filled in the totals numbers yet, so we're not going to whoopsies. Don't want to scan over there because then you guys will see the fact that I haven't done the work on that side yet. But okay, so now we've gone through the top 100. We've given you the starting rank. We've given you the final rank and whether there was anything to learn from it. Now it's important to look basically at the rest of the data here. We'll zoom in a little bit because we don't need those extra columns. Things like, and I don't know that these are super important, the average, the difference, that like those are mostly computational columns. But as you get over to the right side of what folks on YouTube can see right now, which is things like the live average, that's column V here on our Excel spreadsheet, as in Victor. The live absolute value average, that's column X. The running per 10, that's Y, and the absolute value per 10, which is column Zebra. This, I think, is where we can start to make some kinds of assessments on whether there were patterns in this sort of, you might call it a Charlie board, a Charlie map, like when he's looking for forget what was it was the person in that office that Charlie Day is looking for. Pepe Silva, I think, right? Pepe Silva. I got all these letters for Pepe Silva. Pepe Silva. It's an absolutely amazing scene. Or if you want to go, Russell Crowe, Beautiful Mind. So as you're staring at all of this stuff, this wall O numbers, the V, X, Y, and Z, these 4 columns, and maybe I should pull them over to the side so you can see the names in the columns a little bit more clearly right next to each other. But like, for instance, and we'll go through more of this tomorrow or the next day, or the next day or the day after that, depending on whether or not everybody in my household is vomiting at some point soon. You can see like how things are going effectively on this board. We're also going to remove guys like Giannis because they're punt plays. Yeah, I mean, he's the big one to pull out in the early going. Single punt plays, because Trae Young's kind of a double punt. We could maybe pull out Trae Young as well, but I don't want to make too many exceptions. Giannis is the one where you're like, yeah, you draft him, you are guaranteed to be punting free throws. At least you should be. But like the rest of these dudes, you make the argument that if you're taking them there, you better be confident that that's where they're going to end up. So, I mean, let's say if I took Giannis out here, what does it do to the numbers? So it dramatically reshapes how the first round goes. So we just remove Giannis, let everything else be fine. Let's call it, he was like I don't know. Well, it doesn't matter. I don't need to fill it in with something. But now you can see how that changes things, at least in the early going. But again, as you look at these running totals here, V, X, Y, and Z columns, these ones that to me tell more of the story, you can see like the live average or the live absolute value average, it's pretty low after the first, up until Trae Young. And then, it comes up a little bit through the second round and it ticks up a little bit and it's still kind of ticking up a little bit. And it just, it slowly gets worse. What about that per 10? That's the one that's going to come up and come down and come up and come down. because the absolute value average, even if it levels off for 3-4 names in a row or something like that, it's eventually going to slowly inch forward. That per 10 tells you how accurate the different rounds are. And that's what we'll get in on our next show. We're going to look at that absolute value average, that absolute value per 10. We're going to look at the regular per 10 and kind of compare those things. I don't know if that'll take up an entire episode, but luckily, even if it doesn't, we can start to move over towards the totals side as well. But what did we learn so far? Well, we went through every name in the top 100. We looked where they finished. And what can we learn from it? Well, all these different lessons that we just pulled together over the last 2 shows, we're going to apply those as we start handicapping for next season, which we're sort of doing now, but we'll do much harder after free agency in July. I am Dan Vespers for Old Man Squad. Thanks for watching. Like, rate, and subscribe on your way out. Give Bet Online a check. At Dan Vespers for me on Twitter. Old Man Squad on Blue Sky. And also Old Man Squad, by the way, on Twitter. That's the all network feed. So if you want to find out when, a Noah show drops or when a Kingy show drops or something like that, that's where you can learn from those as well. I will maybe see you tomorrow. If everybody's healthy around here, I'll be back with you tomorrow. Stay tuned and pray for us.